Good morning guys and welcome to another episode of Video Game News, the show bringing you the latest and the freshest around the world of video gaming, and today we definitely have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get right into it. The first news story is coming from the former leader of Visceral Games, Ben Wannett, who has revealed some of his plans about the future of the Dead Space franchise. Quoting the current creative director of Crystal Dynamics, the notion was you were trying to survive day to day against infested ships, searching for a glimmer of life, scavenging supplies to keep your own little ship going, trying to find survivors. He follows along with what was the original idea behind the Dead Space games, saying that they want to add a much bigger emphasis on the exploration aspect while blending it together with the creepy and tense day-to-day survival that he mentioned from the previous games. The Flotilla section in Dead Space 3 hinted at what non-linear gameplay could be, and I would have loved to go a lot deeper into that. Clearly the idea that Wannett is trying to present here is that the player would be jumping from ship to ship, exploring them and defeating the enemies as they go, with a different and differently scary encounter happening on every single mission or every single ship, depending on how you look at the game progress. While the overall gameplay would be much more open, within the ships themselves you would get that good old creepy, linear, dark, scary, and frustrating gameplay that the first Dead Space game managed to bring you so well. Now unfortunately, most of these plans never got to be realized as Visceral Games got merged by EA, and Ben Wannett is now, like I said, the creative director at Crystal Dynamics. But who knows, you know, this franchise itself was rather successful, especially with its first two games when it came out. And I would definitely not be against seeing a revived version with much more open world gameplay and with the same horror and creepy aspect that we've all come to love. What do you guys think? In talking about game studios that were merged or nearly had a close down, Vostok Games, the original members of GSC who worked on the Stalker games, have unfortunately announced that the new open world Stalker inspired game that they're building is going to be delayed. Quoting directly from the developers, "The positive community feedback encouraged us to delay the release of the early access to ensure the well-received core experience isn't marred by technical issues. On top of fixing these issues, this delay will also allow us to further improve other aspects of the game thanks to the masses of data and player feedback gathered through testing." Now, I think it's kind of like a dead meme at this point that all Stalker related games and features either get delayed to infinity or when they come out are buggy as hell, but hopefully it looks like Vostok Games are now doing their absolute best to prevent this from happening, and I wish them the best of luck for this to come out, because me and I feel like a lot of people have slowly been kind of getting tired of the same old battle royale genre. But if they manage to put an interesting spin on it within the Stalker universe, with the creepiness, with the anomalies, with radiation, who knows, I might be willing to give it a try. And next up, a short story coming from Overwatch. Its 28th hero, the freaking hamster, has now got a release date and also a showcase of some of its new skins that are going to be coming out. The little hamster called Hammond is going to be rolling out on July 24th, and if you're wanting to review all of his skins, including the visual skins as well as the weapons and the golden weapon, you can find all of that on the Overwatch website. And next up, it seems that more and more online communities in games are trying to battle against toxic behavior. And next up on the chopping block is Rainbow Six Siege. A new banning system is currently being tested and implemented that should hopefully help prevent a lot of the hate speech that is happening within the Siege online community by enforcing bans on the people who use foul language or improper behavior in the chat. These bans can differ depending on the number of offenses by said person, from up to 30 minutes on the first offense all the way to 2 hours upon second and third offense, with players who receive third strikes even potentially being banned permanently from the game. Now, this seems rather extreme in my opinion. I know that online communities in games like this tend to be really, let's say, unfriendly and toxic, but giving people permanent bans for foul language in the chat feels like going just a little bit too far, especially with it being so easy to misuse this by just spelling swear words differently or using one extra letter to make sure the algorithm doesn't recognize them. So me and I think a lot of other people are just waiting to see how this comes into play and how it actually works, and only then will I be convinced that it is actually a good idea to implement. And our final story for today is coming from the snowy world of Canada, and more closely, London, Ontario, where Digital Extremes keep adding more content to Warframe. It's pretty crazy actually. Just last week you could actually go to Ontario to experience TennoCon, a big showcase where the developer reveals all kinds of new content. They have a cosplay competition, and you can see some parts of their offices. And while all the previous years they've had some major announcements to show, and this year I can tell you for sure was not different one bit. The first thing that they revealed, or the first from the big things that they revealed, which were I would say 3, is Fortuna. It's the new big open world on Venus, which is a lot more snowy than Plains of Eidolon. And according to the developers, it's also much larger. Now it has a lot of the stuff you would expect. It has the hub area, kind of like Cetus from Plains of Eidolon. Instead of building Zaws and melee weapons, you can now build secondary weapons at a stand, making me think that at some point you're probably going to be able to build primary weapons in the third open world area that they make. And you can also make like a MOA robotic pet companion there for some reason. Not sure how modding that or using that is actually going to come into play, but I'm definitely excited to try it. Now the world of Venus is really beautiful with some stunning landscapes, really cool and long draw distances, and interesting and creative enemy designs that look like ginormous spiders. Also, they have hoverboards from Back to the Future that you can do freaking tricks on. Now I think that the reason for doing this is so that you don't use Arcwing, which I don't think is allowed at all, so that they can increase the performance while widening and expanding on the world. And personally, I'm totally fine with it. The hoverboards look freaking amazing, but of course it's gonna come down to how well they can control. The next big announcement was Railjack, or Operation Railjack, which allows a group of Tenno to get into a smaller ship that they can operate. Now in the demonstration they mostly showed just 2 players, but I would say this expands all the way up to 4 as regular missions, and this ship allows you to take flight up into the orbit of Venus, where you then battle a huge Corpus ship that you have to take down while manning the stations, redirecting power in the ship from weapon systems to armor systems to shields, and switching modes to help your fellow Tenno who then need to get out of the ship, fly Arcwing style into the big behemoth of a Corpus ship that you're fighting, disable it from within, and all of it is happening in real time. This looked freaking amazing when I saw it. Of course, this was just a demonstration with some extra enemies spawned and with the map laid out exactly for it to be showcased the best. So we have yet to see if that's going to be a separate mode or if it's going to be a separate planet-like style, kind of like how Derelict works. I'm not sure yet, and I'm also not sure what kinds of missions it's going to lead into, but it definitely looks amazing, and it definitely also shows a lot of where Warframe could eventually end up. That each mission where you go is a different type of approach, or you need to actually get to the ship, not just get a cutscene of landing on it. And the final thing that they showed is going to be a new cinematic quest that is going to continue in the storyline of the quests from the Second Dream into the War Within and into the Sacrifice, this one being called the New War, and most likely it's going to be taking us into the Tau system. If you're interested in learning more about these or watching more of the gameplay that they showed, there is a wonderful 31-minute video on the Warframe YouTube channel that you can find, which showcases both the open world as well as the Operation Railjack, where they take down the huge Corpus fighter. So I highly encourage you to watch it, and you'll also get some developer commentary on the background there. Anyways, that is it for all the news for today. Of course, there's a lot more to talk about. I just picked the stories that I thought you guys would be the most interested in. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated. I want to wish you all a beautiful rest of today. I'm gonna see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.